Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about in silico research. My name is Laura Helmuth, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Scientific American. We're here with Dr. Prith Banerjee and with Dr. Laura Matz, and it's going to be a great conversation. We'll go ahead and get started. So to start us out, could you each please introduce yourselves, say what company you're with, and your respective roles within your companies?
Thank you very much, Laura, for introducing us. So I am Prith Banerjee. I am Chief Technology Officer at ANSYS. ANSYS is a modeling and simulation company. We take the world around us and we convert them into the laws of physics, and we solve those physics through simulation programs by using numerical methods. And we solve mechanical physics problems, fluids physics problems, electromagnetics physics problems, and so on. And most recently, we have been trying to use the simulation tools to solve problems in the healthcare area. We are a company of about 5,000 employees, about 2 billion in revenue. And my role as CTO at ANSYS is to look at our long-term technology directions of where is simulation headed. So I'm looking at things like AI, machine learning, digital twins, high-performance computing, as well as healthcare. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Prith and Laura. I'm really happy to be here today. So I'm Laura Matz. I'm the Chief Science and Technology Officer for Merck KGaA Darmstadt, Germany. And we are a 353-year-old company that's been working on science and technology for all of our history. In our company, we have three business sectors: electronics, healthcare, and life science. And as we look at the global trends and facing society today, we're really intersecting many of those trends. Now, what we need to do is make sure that we have science and technology at the forefront of where we're going in each of these specific business sector areas. And so my role is really to look at what are the future technologies that we need to advance our efforts within these three spaces. Today, we'll be talking about healthcare, and I'm very excited about this conversation because of the work that ANSYS is doing on the simulations ties very well to with the problems and the approaches we're trying to solve within the healthcare and life science space.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So I think to really start digging into it, could you tell us some more about the different opportunities for research and development and the use of computational modeling and simulation in various phases of drug design and development in pharma? So things like drug discovery, drug development, drug delivery, manufacturing, packaging, distribution. And Laura, would you like to go first on this one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think as we look to the future of healthcare and medicine and designing future therapeutics, we see two kind of key trends. And I think then this really ties into where simulations can be the most impactful. So the first is personalized medicine. You can imagine in the future, really we'll have therapeutics that are designed, whether it's the dosage or whether it's a specific therapy or combination of therapies, that's really tied to the person's specific genetic and biological makeup, and really designed for them to be most effective. So that's kind of one key trend that we see coming in the next 10, 20 years. And really the question is then, how do we advance our capabilities and our therapeutic approaches to really go in that direction of making therapies much more effective? So when we look at the process of drug discovery, taking from the very idea of what will be a future therapeutic and taking it all the way through clinical trials, simulations can impact each step in that process. So going from the target discovery, then identifying specific leads that will then go validate with early trials and eventually into clinical trials, and how we use simulation to identify either greater probabilities of success as we move through those different stages, or more effective therapies and targets is a key part of where we use simulation capability. And so we're really trying to design all of the simulations that we put in place to drive higher probability of success for those therapeutics, and to streamline the process and link the different data streams together so that we can really tie back the learnings that we have from each stage to feed into either feed forward to the next stage or feed backwards into the next generation of therapeutics. And so this intersection across the stages and the data integration becomes very important, I think, as we look at simulation impact to the therapeutic space. Prith, I don't know if you want to add from a simulation capability, what trends you see?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Laura. It was a great overview. So as we look at the pharma industry, right, we kind of look at 5 stages of the use of simulation in the pharma industry. The first stage is drug discovery, right? When you are trying to, for example, the COVID vaccine, right, that was created, right? You have a particular virus or whatever that you're trying to go after, and that you model through a protein, and then you're trying to invent a new drug, right? Which is maybe a small molecule or a large molecule. So you're essentially trying to do through simulation whatever is happening in the real world, in the biological world, in the chemistry world, right? You're trying to simulate it through computational chemistry and so on. And so we at ANSYS, we don't have computational chemistry capabilities within ANSYS. So we partner with the likes of Schrodinger and OpenEye and CCG to bring those capabilities to our customers. The next stage is what is called drug development. That is looking at the chemistry, right, interacting with the different parts of the human body, right, and there are techniques like pharmacodynamics, pharmacochemistry, and so on. And again, there we partner with the likes of Simulation Plus and others. And then the next stage is sort of drug manufacturing, where you're taking a drug, right, and you found out that it is a COVID vaccine drug right now, but you have to manufacture it at scale, so in mixing tanks and so on. And that is very close to the heart of ANSYS, because we have all kinds of structural simulations and fluid simulations, and we can do all kinds of things like digital twins of manufacturing equipment, bioreactors, and so on. So a lot of simulation is used to actually model the manufacturing process of these drugs. And then once you have manufactured the drug, you're injecting the drug, right? So you're doing drug delivery, and you have and the drug can be delivered through oral or delivered through injections and so on. And again, that's the interaction that we can again model very well through simulation, right? As you inject 1 milliliter of a drug inside a human body, right? And that goes through the veins and all the cardiovascular systems, and we can model all of that through simulation. The last stage is that of sort of drug packaging and so on. And again, a classic example of the use of simulation is we partnered with a company called SkyCell, right, which were trying to deliver those drugs. These COVID vaccines had to be put under really low temperature. So are you actually delivering the drug while it is being transferred through aircraft or trucks, and they're being really, really low temperature or not? So all of those can be modeled through simulation. So simulation is applied in all phases in the pharma industry, but we are particularly excited about these opportunities of in silico trials.
Oh, that's great. It's wonderful to hear about all the progress that's being made. And so to shift a little bit from research and development, could you both tell us a bit about the current state of the art as far as testing and regulatory approvals in the pharma industry for things like in vitro testing, animal trials, clinical trials, in silico trials? And Prith, if we could go back to you, maybe you could start us on this one.
Sure. So let me start with a philosophical kind of thing, right? In every industry that simulation is used, right, be it automotive or aerospace and so on, right? So if 50 years ago, when people in the aerospace industry designed a new airplane wing, they built a clay model of a wing, put it in a wind tunnel, and tested whether the wing was going to fly or not, right? Today, you do that through simulation. Or in the car industry, automotive industry, people used crash testing of cars, put a dummy inside a car and run that car and crash test it to see if the dummy will survive or not, right? And again, in that industry, people are now using simulation-based models. We would like to see the same in the healthcare industry, right? Where today the state of the art is you invent the drug, right, in a chemistry lab, and then you test it on cells in vitro, and then you test it on animals, you test it on a few animals, then you test it on a few humans, and so on. And though that process is extremely expensive, so can we use in silico trials, meaning use computer simulation models of humans, of animals, and so on, and thereby accelerate the process? Let me pass it over to Laura to ask her view.
Yeah, so I think this is a really exciting advancement, and we're seeing more and more momentum. So, as Prith highlighted, this ability to have greater predictability as you go through the various stages from cells to animals to human trials, and also identify use the simulations to predict the right population, and to have a diverse kind of sample set to make sure that you're really understanding the effectiveness of the therapeutic. I think all along those various stages, we can use simulations to really help enable either a smaller sample size, or kind of advancements and acceleration of the process. The good news, I think, from a regulatory standpoint, is we are seeing more and more momentum within various regulatory agencies around supporting simulation being a part of the overall data set that's provided for the various regulatory stages of approval. And so that helps us really kind of advance as an industry, and make it more mainstream. And that kind of collective learning that we have can then even fast forward more, the simulation being a part of every clinical trial. So we see this as a really important advancement. And again, as Prith highlighted, given the expense of clinical trials, especially when you have to go back and maybe redo some of the phases, that can be incredibly expensive as well as time consuming, and delays getting those therapies to the patient population. And so we really want to streamline that as possible. The better we're able to use simulations to enable the predictive approaches that we have, the better we're able to get therapies into the market much sooner.
Oh, that's great. And to stay with you for a moment, what do you think are some of the barriers you're seeing right now to the adoption of in silico trials?
Right. So this is where the conceptual meets the reality, because a lot of times the data is incomplete. And you can take it, if we look at the clinical trials as we work with patient populations, maybe we have an incomplete data set. We don't have all the data that we would like in terms of the patient population, or it wasn't, or the data isn't unstructured, and so it's in various formats, and that can make it difficult to really aggregate the data and feed into the simulated models. And so one of the challenges that we see to really kind of advancing this as a whole is making the data structured and available. Now, we have an approach within my team where we're working with medical institutes to bring together patient data in a secure and protected way, so that more either academics or pharmaceutical companies can take advantage of that aggregated data to really learn and advance the various scientific studies that they want to do. And we see that as a step forward to really enable the data availability, while of course protecting the patient security. That also kind of ties to the second thing, which is whenever you talk about patient data, one of the most critical aspects is the data ethics. And so in parallel, we've established a digital ethics board to make sure that as we progress forward, and we're looking at leveraging kind of learning patient data, that we do it in a very ethical way. And we think that that's foundational to move this forward while also maintaining kind of confidentiality. And Prith, I don't know, from your perspective, what you've seen in terms of the simulation side, especially around clinical trials, but I think this is an exciting area that it seems ANSYS is jumping into.
And actually, let me sort of complement what you just said, Laura. I mean, so there are I see sort of two barriers. One is, are the simulation results accurate enough, right? And so we at ANSYS are trying to model, for example, virtual organs, right? The heart model. The heart is the most complicated part of a human body, right? The ventricle, the aorta, and the things and so on. And we can go to the really, really accurate level and try to model the heart in the most accurate way. But then you have a model of a heart for a male patient, then for a female patient, an obese patient, a thin patient, and so on. So you have all these different 5,000 different models of a human heart for different patients and so on. And so one is the accuracy. The second thing is the regulatory stuff, right? So the FDA has to approve the new process. Instead of doing animal testing, clinical testing, now they have to approve the simulation-based testing. And so we are working on some tools like the ASME VNV40 rules to change the way validation is done and data is collected and submitted to the FDA. So those are the barriers, but I think we are making progress in both areas.
Yeah. Great. And just real quickly, could you tell me about some of the enablers you're seeing, some of the ways that we might reduce some of the barriers you've described?
The enablers are basically the fact that now we are working with ASME VNV 40 sort of committee that has been blessed by the FDA. And so we are showing actually that these results are fast enough. And then we are showing with tools such as Minerva, so here is a way for you to collect all the data. And so in the past, the FDA expected data in sort of paper formats and so on. And here are all these things. And we are essentially helping move towards digital transformation. That is how we are enabling the FDA. But we are all in this together. We are working with the pharma companies, simulation tools, and FDA to make sure it is a digital process by which we can approve these in silico trials.
Yeah, Laura, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that we've seen more and more, kind of support for sharing and collaboration on data to really advance and kind of accelerate, the learnings in key areas. I think COVID highlighted the learnings from the COVID vaccine development have been an enabler for, data collaboration. And then, as we work on Syntropy as an example with different medical institutes, there's been strong kind of understanding that working together to really create sort of these structured data sets can really advance the learning. The ultimately having a better data set makes the training models more effective. It gives an ability to link the different stages that we talked about in the beginning of drug discovery together. And so I think we're really, as an industry, and starting to advance this capability and this approach overall, which is exciting to see.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much to both of you for sharing these great insights with us, and best of luck with all the research and development. And we're eager to hear about how it progresses from here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to both. Yeah. Thank you.